What if one airport arrival could tell you everything about how fast a tennis career has changed? Alex Eala came to New York carrying the disappointment of Cincinnati, the expectations of millions of Filipino fans, and the pressure of preparing for the biggest stage in American tennis. But according to the story surrounding her arrival, what happened at JFK turned an ordinary trip into something much bigger. Waiting for her was Martina Navratilova, one of the most accomplished champions the sport has ever seen. And whether you look at that moment as a passing of the torch, a sign of respect, or simply one great competitor recognizing another player's potential, it perfectly captures how dramatically the conversation around Eala has changed. New York isn't easily impressed. This is a city built on noise, crowds, bright lights, and people chasing impossible dreams. But Eala wasn't arriving as just another young player hoping to make a name for herself. At 21, she was coming into the US Open conversation ranked number 18 in the world and carrying expectations that would have seemed almost unbelievable only months earlier. Her trip to New York came immediately after a painful Cincinnati defeat. Eala had entered that match riding a 9-match winning streak, only for Amanda Anisimova to stop her in 3 sets. Eala had opportunities in the deciding set and even held a 2-game advantage before Anisimova flipped the match, winning 6 consecutive games to close it out. That kind of loss can stick with a player. But there was no time to dwell on it. Eala packed up, left Cincinnati behind, and turned her attention toward New York. The final Grand Slam of the season represented another opportunity, and her rise during 2026 had already shown how quickly things could change. At the beginning of the year, Eala was outside the world's top 40. 8 months later, she had climbed all the way to number 18, and Washington was a major reason why. There, Eala captured her first WTA singles championship after navigating a field filled with elite opponents. Zheng Qinwen, an Olympic gold medalist, was among the names she overcame. So was defending champion Leylah Fernandez. Then came world number 10 Elina Svitolina and 4-time Grand Slam champion Naomi Osaka. And waiting in the final was Jessica Pegula, the world number 3. Rain complicated everything and forced an interruption, but when play resumed, Eala delivered when the pressure was highest. She reeled off 6 straight games in the deciding set and completed one of the biggest victories of her young career. Back home, the reaction went far beyond ordinary sports celebration. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. congratulated her, the Philippine Senate honored her, and she was being discussed as one of the country's newest sporting heroes. Then Wimbledon added another chapter. Eala arrived on the grass as the first-seeded Filipino player in Grand Slam history. That alone represented a milestone. But she wasn't satisfied simply being there. In the second round on center court, she faced defending champion Iga Swiatek and pulled off a stunning victory, taking the opening set through an 11-9 tiebreak before winning the second 6-2. Suddenly, some of tennis's most recognizable figures were paying attention. Catherine, Princess of Wales, was watching. Billie Jean King praised her. Venus Williams took notice. And Maria Sharapova, one of Eala's own tennis idols, acknowledged her breakthrough. Eala eventually reached the 4th round before her run ended against Jasmine Paolini, but the larger point had already been made. She wasn't simply a promising prospect anymore. She was becoming an international story. That brings us back to New York. According to the source story, hundreds of supporters gathered when Eala arrived at JFK. Philippine flags filled the terminal. Fans carried signs celebrating Eala Nation and calling her their pride. Chants of "Eala, Eala, Eala" rolled through the arrivals area. Then came the moment nobody expected. The crowd opened, and Martina Navratilova was standing there holding a welcome sign for Eala. For a young player, that's not just another familiar face. Navratilova won 18 Grand Slam singles championships and spent 332 weeks as the world's number 1 player. She represents one of the highest standards the sport has ever known. And her interest in Eala, according to the story, hadn't started at JFK. Navratilova had already been following her development, praising the excitement she was generating and recognizing her ability to introduce tennis to new audiences across Southeast Asia. But perhaps more important than the praise was the criticism. Navratilova had identified Eala's serve as an area that could significantly improve. The analysis was specific: a serve sitting around 80 to 85 miles per hour despite the potential for more speed, a grip that needed work, an underused kick serve, and a left-handed slice that could become a much more dangerous weapon. That's the kind of feedback that matters. Compliments tell you what you've already done. Great criticism tells you where the next level might be. Former British #1 Greg Rustashi made a similar point. If Eala could turn the serve into a true first-strike weapon, particularly on New York's hard courts, another dimension could open up in her game. And Eala's response was exactly what you'd want from an ambitious young player: get back on the practice court and work. When she reportedly saw Navratilova at the airport, the surprise was written all over her face. The two embraced, Eala thanked her, and the fans around them erupted again. From there, attention shifted toward what awaited her at Flushing Meadows, and her schedule was packed. First came women's singles, where her ranking put her in position to enter as one of the tournament's higher seeds. Then mixed doubles, where she was set to partner Canadian star Felix Auger-Aliassime through a wildcard entry. On top of that, Eala was scheduled to play American rising talent Eva Jovic during the Stars of the Open exhibition, giving her an early taste of the atmosphere on the tournament's biggest stage. That's a lot of tennis. It's also a lot of pressure. Yet Eala's public approach remained simple: concentrate on the quality of her tennis and focus on winning. No need to make the moment bigger than it already is. That mentality matters because expectations around her have started reaching another level. Some people have even drawn comparisons between Eala and Manny Pacquiao, not necessarily because their careers are identical, but because of what each athlete can represent to Filipino sports fans. When Eala walks into certain stadiums now, the atmosphere changes. Filipino flags appear. Chants grow louder. Suddenly, a tennis match can feel like a national event. Pegula herself has spoken about how difficult that kind of atmosphere can make a match. Eala, however, has been cautious about Pacquiao comparisons. She has made clear that she considers herself far from what Pacquiao achieved, while recognizing that there may be similarities in the way an athlete's journey can inspire people back home. That humility may be one of the most important parts of this entire story. Because underneath the rankings, headlines, packed crowds, and viral moments is still a player who understands that none of it lasts without the work. She remembers where the journey started. She remembers the difficult courts in Quezon City, the setbacks, the uncertainty, and the countless hours required before the rest of the tennis world started paying attention. Her philosophy is straightforward. These experiences only became possible because of the work she had already done, and they will only continue if she keeps doing that work. That mindset is going to be tested in New York. The U.S. Open can be chaotic. Arthur Ashe Stadium can overwhelm players who have spent their entire lives dreaming of competing there. The crowd is loud, momentum swings quickly, and there's nowhere to hide when the pressure hits. But maybe that environment suits Eala. After all, her entire rise has been about entering places where she wasn't expected to dominate, and refusing to be intimidated by the moment. From outside the top 40 to number 18, from prospect to WTA champion, from making Filipino tennis history to beating some of the biggest names in the sport. And now, from Cincinnati disappointment straight into the bright lights of New York. Nothing is guaranteed at the U.S. Open. That's important. Rankings don't guarantee deep runs, hype doesn't win matches, and even the most passionate crowd cannot hit the ball for you. Eala still has to earn every point, but that's exactly why this next chapter is so compelling. She has the attention. She has the experience of major victories. She has an entire fan base ready to turn Flushing Meadows into something that feels a little bit like Manila. Now comes the hardest part, doing it again when everybody is watching. New York is ready. Filipino fans are ready. The tennis world is watching, and Alex Eala's story feels nowhere near finished.